You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn connects you with experts from all over the world to help you take charge of your career, your business, and your life. Rap along with us. Visit drjacalyn.com to learn how to become a guest or a sponsor. And now, the doctor is in.
Hello and welcome to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. It's all about dating. I love this program. We get to talk to experts who can share information with us about what it's really like in the dating world. We talk to matchmakers. Today we have someone on we've never had in this category before. She is a breakup expert. I love this. I mean, I certainly have had so many breakups that I definitely need help. So I can't wait to hear from her. I am your host and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and I'm a certified life and career coach, also certified in yoga sculpt and meditation. With me today, as every show about dating, it is my co-host, Lisa Manyoky. Lisa,
hey,
hello.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
So good. So today we're talking about recovery. Oh,
yes. It's so good. I love it. So you and I have talked before. We're both single. We've had, I don't want to say our share. I'll say I've had my share of failed relationships, but it's always good to look at it from a learning experience, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I've taken a little bit from each one, and I've had plenty as well. I mean, I've been single a while as well, but raising my kids. You know what? You get over it as fast as you decide to, though.
That's for sure. You know, before we begin, would you share a little bit about the work you're doing at Presence Intelligence? Because it really goes hand in hand with dating.
Well, Presence Intelligence is the ability to align who you are on the inside and the best parts of who you are with what you project on the outside. Without any alignment, then you'll feel uncomfortable, and so will everyone around you. When it really comes to dating, it's really important that who you are shows up in the beginning, because if you're putting on a good act or on best behavior, and then it's not sustainable, you end up, number one, getting stressed, and number two, misleading another party. So the best way to present when you're either new to dating or even old to dating, show up and be who you are. That takes some introspection and some real honesty and sometimes mentorship. So I work with people to figure out really what their best parts are, make peace with the parts of them that they either won't change or can't change, and then use their best assets to neutralize the impact of where they're not feeling terribly strong. It's a great service that I find personally gratifying, and so far it's been pretty effective too.
I just love that, because everything you're saying is so important, aligning ourselves on the outside with the inside. And what, you know, when you show up, you want to show up and be authentic from the first date on. It's really important, because we've both been in situations where people didn't show up authentically.
Oh, or yeah, the good behavior. And I'm thinking, oh, who's this person?
Who is that?
And the truth is, the who you are shows up anyway. So you might as well get it over with in the beginning and then be adored or cherished because of who you are, not in spite of who you are, right?
Yes, definitely. Well, our guest today is Donna Barnes. She is literally a legend when it comes to relationships, dating, and being a breakup coach. She has been featured on all the major networks, all the major shows. I'm so excited that she's here with us today. Let's bring her out. Live from Philadelphia, it's Donna Barnes. Hi, Donna.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
So nice to have you. And as we were talking before the show, you are local. Lisa and I are in New Jersey, and there you are right in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah, we're all like, you know, right in each other's backyard, so to speak. So that's really fun, because I actually talk to people all over the world. Like I have a new client that's in Australia. So, you know, the time difference sometimes can be tricky, you know, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. So before the show started, we were talking about the fact that you were in New York, and that you started out, I don't want to misspeak, but I think you started out as a model. You had a modeling career. So would you give us a little bit of your background from wherever you want to start till today?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Well, we might as well start there. I actually met a girl here in Philadelphia who was a model when I thought that I was going to go to medical school. And much to my father's chagrin, because he had, master's in education, she introduced me to her agency, and I started working locally here in Philadelphia, which I really have an affinity for, because in those days, in the 80s, there was big department stores here, that, like John Wanamaker's and Strawbridge and Clothier, that did all in-house modeling. So then that helped me get an agency in New York. And initially I was taking the Amtrak back to New York every single day, which in those days it was really cheap. It was like $32 round trip, right? But and then they got me my first apartment. So really for the first 20 years of my career. And, my father had said to me, okay, you've got 1 year, and if a year from now it's not going well, you're going to college, and by the end of that year, his big joke was, well, I guess she's doing okay. She stopped asking me for money. So it was a blessing and a curse, because it was wonderful. And I got quite an education actually in the 80s in Manhattan, and then moved to Los Angeles in the 90s, where I pursued acting. I had studied acting in New York, and then there was a production strike in New York, and everybody said, you got to go to LA, you got to go to LA. And I booked a guest spot on a TV show by Glenn Larson, actually, who ended up being a very dear friend, who'd been a monstrous producer. And all the girls flew me out to Palm Springs, which was fun. I'd never been there. But over lunch, all the other girls were saying, oh, did you audition for this? Did you audition for that? And I was sitting there listening, going, geez, I don't audition for any of that. So I ended up subletting a place and then getting an agent out there, and lived there for like 6 years. But if I'm honest, like, I walked around the whole time going, wow, I can't believe I left New York. Like, all I ever wanted to do was live in New York, and I left, So I came back to New York. And unfortunately, by leaving, I had lost a lot of my modeling contacts, and then I was older. So actually, one of the best things that happened to me, I went to a party, and this friend of mine called me over and was like, hey, come here. She's perfect for what you're looking for. And I was like, what are you looking for? And it was these people from September Films out of London working for Sky that were making a documentary about single successful women in New York. And it was really one of the first reality shows. So for the summer of 2001, this production company followed me and my 3 girlfriends that my one girlfriend had nicknamed the Barracuda Brigade. And it was a huge hit. It ran on Sky in 13 different countries under the Real Sex and the City, and then got picked up in New York on a local channel called Metro TV, and then nationally on We, called Single in the City. So that led to probably the best phone call I've ever gotten in my life. The president of Metro TV called me and offered me a talk show. He said they were doing a talk show about sex and relationships, and they felt like their audience got to know me as a single girl, because the show was a monster success in New York. And they offered me a talk show and printed up posters all over New York City that said, come join Bob Berkowitz and dating expert Donna Barnes. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, but the PR girl who I'd become quite friends with, and she was like, Donna, you give me better advice than anybody I know, including my therapists, because, somewhere along the way, I'd had my heart ripped out for the first time, and in just trying to figure out how to deal with that before computers and the internet, I found that knowledge was the only thing that made me feel better. And a girlfriend gave me a self-help book, and it changed my life too. I started reading everything I could get on my hands on, kind of going, well, geez, what's wrong with me? Prior to that, I hadn't really lost anybody, lost family members. But so anyway, yeah, so I then got a hosting agent, because I was hosting this talk show, and started going on auditions. But, he very wisely said to me at Abrams Artists, Mark Turner said, yeah, but why are you an expert? You either need a degree or you need to write a book. So I did both. I actually had an audition, met a girl who was sitting there, and she said to me, are you a therapist? And I said, no, are you? And she said, no, I'm a life coach. And this was back in 06. And I was like, what's a life coach? And she was telling me about this program that she just finished at NYU. So I ran home, and the next semester was starting in a few weeks. So I enrolled and officially became a certified life coach, which then enabled me to really officially start helping other people. And naturally, dating and relationships is my specialty. But, unfortunately, I've been through at least a dozen really painful breakups. One like serial monogamist in the fact that I had long-term relationships, but then they, I tend to pick men with commitment issues. It's just, which means I have my own commitment issues, right? So it's like,
Wow.
I can tell exactly why, but so then fast forward, most of my clients at this point really are because they're struggling to get through a breakup, and they watch videos on my YouTube channel and they'll say, you're the only one that said, this, and I saw that I could talk to you and I really wanted to talk to you. So, if all the painful breakups I've gone through can help me, stopping other people from having a long string of breakups, then I'll feel like it was worth something. It's like help other people make better choices. So
wow,
that's
quite a background. It sounds so glamorous. I can just see you on the Amtrak and going to New York, and it just sounds really lovely.
Well, I met a lot of very interesting men as a teenager. You always looked for the empty seat, and somebody would always come and sit next to me. And I had a manager who said to me, honey, if a man asks you to dinner, you go. It's a free meal. So every guy that asked me out, I'd say, yeah, okay. And what I learned was that I'd rather sit at home with a slice of pizza than be having dinner with somebody that I didn't really want to have dinner with. But I sat next to Bob Woodward one time,
Wow.
it's like, who was fascinating, right? And back in the 80s, it wasn't that far out from all the president's men, right? So that wasn't too bad, although it was much nicer when I got my first apartment.
I'm sure. I think I've always thought that the train was a great place to meet people.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a little bit of that airplane thing where, you're sitting next to a stranger. You're much more willing to be open and share stuff about yourself because you think you're not going to see that person again.
Exactly.
And then to your point about dating, right? Then, I think people get so nervous and they get so in their head and they're so worried about what the other person is thinking. But, if you're just sitting next to somebody on a train, you're not in your head. You're just kind of there, which is what you're supposed to be on a date. But that's much harder to do.
Exactly. Lisa, any stories that you have from being on a train and meeting someone?
Trains, no, but planes. I'm nobody famous, but I always saw it as an opportunity. If I could change my seat and sit next to somebody I didn't know, that was a good flight for me, because I'll talk to anybody. So no, but I mean, I'm not afraid of it. I think it's a great opportunity. You're in confined quarters, and my feeling is that you talk about people being more apt to disclose when they think it's temporary. I call that the cloak of anonymity. It's kind of like a masquerade party. This is only going to be for 10 minutes. So they say things. It's very liberating until you see that person again, right?
Well, right. And I have to confess, I can't even tell you how many times, because I used to live in Los Angeles, right? I'd fly home for holidays. I was always running back and forth between New York and Philadelphia, and Los Angeles. And I always thought, you'd exchange phone numbers and you say, you got to know each other for 5 hours. You think you're going to stay friends. And, really, I did meet one girl that became a very dear friend of mine. I used to travel with my cat, right? But my childhood cat that I had that I started taking with me everywhere. My dad used to say to me, that cat's been more places than most people. But I was stuck at JFK, or maybe it was LaGuardia. I think I was going to Florida, but anyway, whatever. And I opened the cage so my cat wasn't stuffed. And this girl came over and started chatting with me. It was a total cat lover, and she and I stayed friends for many years. So it is a good way to.
You just never know. I was on a plane and I was in first class. I got upgraded, and the seat in front of me, there was a really good looking man. He was on the diagonal. So if I was C, he was whatever, A, C. So I saw him take out this presentation. It was a PowerPoint presentation, and it was for NFL players, football players.
Oh,
so
cool.
I was like, oh my gosh, I was trying to figure out who he was. So anyway, when we got off the plane, I thought, I'm going to make the big move and I'm going to go up and I'm going to talk to him. I was so nervous. He was on his way to baggage, and I went up to him and I started talking to him, and he shook my hand, told me his name. I didn't know his last name. I just knew he played for Kansas City. So anyway, after that, I looked him up. I kind of was stalking, but I got his email address and I emailed him and I said, hey, we met, you were in A, I was in C, you were in 1, I was in 2. And I'd really like to get together with you. And he invited me to come out and see him.
Oh,
but
nice.
I didn't go because I looked up how old he was. He was much younger than me.
Well, that's flattering, though.
It was very flattering, and I will always remember that. And he actually won the Super Bowl. He was on the team that when they won. So
yeah, last year. Yeah.
So anyway, so that's that story. But we have to take a quick break. And you're here on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. It's all about dating with my co-host Lisa Manyoky and our special guest Donna Barnes, who is a relationship, dating, and breakup coach expert. She is an expert. So we're going to hear from her when we come back. Let's hear from our sponsors right now. Stay with us here on Business Talk Radio and social media.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There are 7.7 billion people on Earth today. 40% of these people are under the age of 25. Young adults are the most fertile mission field in the world today. In Scripture, we see Jesus pouring his life into 12 young adults who he equipped to change the world and all of history. Like Jesus, we believe that the best approach to reach the world with the gospel is to invest in young, emerging leaders and equip them to build disciple-making movements. Concentric is the notion of surrounding and sharing a common center. Our center is the model and strategy of Jesus for both leadership development and ministry formation. As a global alliance, we provide equipping in biblical leadership based on Jesus' example in the New Testament. Jesus modeled for us how to make disciples that reproduce. Focusing on leadership development is key to creating movements that spread the gospel and Jesus' disciple-making strategy to young leaders around the globe. Our Ministry Alliance partners are actively equipping leaders and building movements of multiplication that reproduce the life of Christ. Join us today to equip young leaders with Jesus' strategy that will change cities and nations.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Academy Sedan and Limo is a full-service transportation company serving the Philadelphia metropolitan area with full knowledge of the New York City, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. areas. We pride ourselves on being the most dependable, conscientious company in the industry. Our always on-time service and dependable pricing make us the company to call for any event or occasion. Our vehicles can accommodate any size party for any occasion. Our vehicles range from four-door sedans to SUVs to minivans to limo buses to full-size tour buses and can accommodate groups of 2 to 100. We offer airport shuttle service or over-the-road service without limitation regarding mileage or time, and no drive is too long or too far. So if you find yourself in need of transportation of any type with any vehicle, give us a call at 610-842-4564 and let us show you what a real transportation company can do for you.
Use code ACADEMY2020 to receive 20% off your first 3 rides, including parking and tolls.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Hello and welcome back to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. It's all about dating. We are live on Business Talk Radio and social media. My co-host is Lisa Manyoky, the founder of Presence Intelligence. And our guest is Donna Barnes. She is a relationship, dating, and breakup coach. Thank you for being here, Donna.
Oh, thank you. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm sorry I'm so red. I've been trying to fix that and I can't figure it out.
No worries. With technology, things always happen, right?
Yeah, right.
So tell us what your experience has been in terms of breakups, people coming to you during the pandemic. Is it more often than in the past?
Well, not at first. Things slowed down because unfortunately, I think people were afraid to spend any money. So I think people were definitely watching more of my videos and commenting, but I had a decline in clients for a little bit, which is partly why I started this breakup course, because I started to notice a pattern. People are having a hard time sleeping, and a lot of the traffic that has been on my YouTube channel has been in the middle of the night. So I thought, an actual course that, you could sign up at any time, because I have an emergency session where you can talk to me within 24 hours. And if I'm just, at home with no other appointment, I'll talk to you right now. But unfortunately, I'd wake up first thing in the morning and see that somebody had signed up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And then, the best I can do is like when I see it in the morning, which is fine, but it would be much nicer if immediately they can get help. So and I think because of the pandemic, people have gotten used to doing this Zoom thing. Like I used to talk to clients via Skype. Now it's switched to Zoom. And people, I upgraded my webcam. It took me like months to get it. It was backordered because, everybody that never thought of having a webcam before now all of a sudden needed one, because in a good way, I think it's also making people realize that there's a lot more that they can take control of at home. But as far as a breakup, though, unfortunately, people are staying in relationships longer than they might have otherwise, because they don't want to put themselves out there so much online, and they're afraid of social distancing and the whole, this pandemic was a horrible time to be single, because it's unnatural to isolate yourself. That breeds depression anyway. And that's exactly what we all had to do. So the people that were living with somebody and already in a relationship, I think had a much easier time of navigating this. And I did notice about, 6 weeks to a month in, I started getting a lot more clients because people were just getting at their wits' end and feeling frustrated and not knowing what to do. And tempers were starting to flare, I know, here in the city, and just people not as compassionate or tolerant. So it's been such a stressful time. It's so exciting to see that the vaccine is finally starting to really get out there, and people are starting to feel a little bit more normal, because they do studies about how important human touch is. And I even know that for myself. I was fortunate. My brother was in Florida, so I went to his beach house in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, because Delaware was so safe. But I completely isolated myself for almost 2 months. And I didn't even realize it was my best friend's birthday in May of last year. And she invited just a handful of very close people to her house. And when I got there, I said to her, "Can I hug you?" And she said, "You better." And it just, like, to touch another human being, like, even if you're not in a relationship, you hug your friends, you hug your family, you see people. So I think it's put an extra strain. And then on the flip side of that, it's put a strain on relationships, because 24/7, if you weren't used to spending that with somebody, has now become more challenging. And unfortunately, you're seeing a rise in violence, domestic violence, because, patience is definitely waning for people and their frustrations. And, if you're living somebody who's with somebody who's toxic to you, I spent a lot of time trying to educate my clients about what is a toxic relationship, because it's amazing to me how many people don't even recognize that the relationship they're in is toxic. It's like the devil, it's like, depending on what your childhood was like, if you had a lot of conflict, then that's not something that's a red flag to you. Like, I had one client that said to me, a beautiful young girl, and said, "How often is it normal to fight?" And I said, "Why? How often are you fighting?" And she was like, "Probably daily." And I was like, no, like, the whole point of an argument should be to help the relationship be better and to discuss something that was causing a problem. But, if you're with somebody that you're just constantly like oil and water or just frickin' frack, right? Then that's not a good relationship. And I always say, it's easy when it's right. Like it's supposed to be easy. And my clients that have been with me for a long time that get to a relationship, like a lot of them will call me and be like, wow, it's so easy. I know exactly what you were talking about now. It's like people do what they want to do. If people want to be together, they'll be together. And, when someone's hoping to be with somebody that doesn't want to be with them, they make all sorts of excuses for, oh, well, like he didn't call because of this or that. And it's like, no, people do what they want to do. If you're jumping through hoops to make something happen, that's not the right relationship.
Something that you said, Donna, really, I got chills up my spine, because when you were talking about the emergency call, I remember like decades ago, like when you're in the throes of this breakup and your heart is literally being ripped outside and you just feel like you need someone to talk to. And it's great that you provide that service.
Well, I get that too. I never knew what a panic attack was in my life until like the person who had sworn up and down that I was the love of their life and that they'd never leave me, left me, right? Like, and I stand by that. I say, you never know how you're going to feel about something until it happens, which is partly why too, someone who's never had that kind of love before doesn't know if it's going to cause anxiety for them, right? So I find that it's invaluable to be able to have, and a lot of my clients have said that to me. They're like, oh my God, that you would talk to me on a Saturday or a Sunday is, so helpful. Cause, a lot of people or like you get busy and then you can't get an appointment and you're like, well, 2 weeks from now, I might not need you. I need you right now. So, I try, I can't always, obviously, but I find it comforting to people that they can have someone talk them off the ledge. And I offer in between support. I always give them my cell phone and say, look, if you feel like you want to contact your ex, text me. I'll talk you out of it. I'll tell you, I'll keep you strong. Sometimes you just need that interaction with somebody to tell you like, no, not your ex. Right.
Right.
So
yeah, you got to keep moving forward. Let's take a look at your clip. I think your clip provides a lot of really good information about the services you provide and how you're helping people. So let's take a look now.
I don't think men are superficial idiots, that their brains are wired to be visual. I'm told I give great advice. Nike Just Do It for exercise, I think really applies to sex too. I've coached hundreds of men and women. So I disagree with her where she's like, put it all out there on the first date. An open book is not sexy. Exactly. Do you have relationship questions? Chances are one of my clients or myself or my friends have gone through the same thing and I already made a video about it. So I invite you to check out my YouTube channel, Donna Barnes. I've made hundreds of advice videos based on real-life experiences so that you can make better choices.
In my upcoming Breakup Recovery Action Plan, there's going to be checklists and quizzes.
Best information that I've ever experienced or acquired. If you're stuck and can't move forward or let go, my action plan is built to help you. Subscribe to my channel. I'll help you have better relationships.
Wow, that was great, Donna. So many good pieces of information there. And I love the view, by the way, spectacular.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that was the seduction of leaving New York, because it's, much more affordable. You get much more in Philadelphia. Well,
yay,
yes, no,
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So one comment I wanted to just throw out there and have us discuss it. I love what you said. You were on another TV show, but you said about putting it all out there on the first date.
Yes, an open book is not sexy.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because they had another, package on where this girl was saying, no, you got to tell everything like when, you first meet. And I think a little bit of mystery is definitely sexy, right? And yes, like I'm not saying be deceptive and you should just be who you are, but because first of all, too, like, I certainly have been on a date where the guy's just trying so hard to impress me. I can't get a word in. And he's telling me all about him. And he's talking. And then I leave and I'm like, he doesn't even know me. Right. So I think that's part of that too. Conversation needs to go both ways. And I always say to clients, if you feel like you're nervous and you don't know what to say, ask a question, because people do usually like to talk about themselves. And, when in doubt, ask a question and an open-ended question and get them talking about them and throw it in them. Because I think the most important question that you need to find out on a date is, how do I feel about this person? People get so caught up in wanting them to like, we want him to like me. Does he like me? Is this okay? And that's not, first of all, the energy is then thrown off. But if you're really, give yourself an assignment to find out what you can about this person, and is this person a good fit for me, then it gets you out of your head, which then makes you more natural. But you also then might really learn something that, A, either makes you very interested, or B, is a major red flag. And I always say to clients, no matter how attracted to somebody you are, if you recognize that's one of your personal red flags, like, no, don't get any deeper in. Cut your ties and get out before your heart gets ripped out, Yeah,
I remember when I was very early on, after a really painful divorce, that one of the questions I came straight out and asked is if the person had ever cheated.
Oh, good for you.
And if they said yes, then I said, well, this will be the last time we talk. And I remember one guy, his name was Wade. He was so upset that I was so willing to walk away, because for me at that point, I was so raw. It's like zero tolerance policy. And I knew that I would not be able to, despite my best efforts, look past it. I'd never be able to trust. And I remember him pestering me. I just need to understand. And my answer to him was, it was really a lot the way he talked about it. He was really flip. And I said, while your kids were laying home in bed, wondering where daddy was, and you were out painting the town red, that was a pretty selfish kind of act. And I don't really want to be with a selfish person. But I was really surprised at how many people answered honestly. And there were plenty.
Well, yeah, and you know what? Good for you, because one of my favorite clients was a very successful man who had just turned 50, who'd never had his heart broken. And then he was debilitated by this girl that had, and she cheated on him. And he said to me, well, she told me she'd never been faithful to anybody. And I said, well, what made you think you'd be different? And he said, well, we had this really special connection. And I said, she had that special connection with everybody. She told you something about her, had nothing to do with you. She cheats. That's it. So like that's excellent advice. And you try to tell people to do that, but
or what it is you want that you absolutely cannot tolerate. If, of course, you don't pepper somebody with this interview style of, here, let me check this off the list. You didn't do that. But there's a way to integrate an important question, and steer the conversation towards something that you absolutely can't tolerate. At the time, I was like, no, I don't want to talk to you. So I wasn't mean about it. I was just really transparent and honest and said, look, it's too great a risk for me personally, and I won't be able to get past it. So
I think it's great that you had your boundaries and that you communicated how you felt. So let's come back on that. We have to take another break and hear from our sponsors. Stay with us here on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. It's all about dating. We'll be right back.
Networking sucks and people suck at it, but nothing gives me more life than walking around and talking to people in an audience and really being able to identify, okay, I see where you're having trouble, let's work on fixing it. How do you help them? How do you provide value? My goal is to give them those tools to be able to go out and tackle that fear. Anywhere there's coffee is where I'll be. So I bring candy a lot to my speaking engagements. Of course that makes sense. I'm a little unconventional.
Ashley was very knowledgeable.
Very entertaining.
I learned a few new things, and to me that's the key.
What do you want them to say? How do you want to be perceived? You're going to get the most direct, tactical tips and practical takeaways when it comes to networking. These two here are super important. You'll remember once the conversation starts.
I love the tips that she gave out. I hate networking with a passion, so I feel like I can get through a meeting or event and not feel so uncomfortable.
When you're going to a presentation, you want to be educated. You also want to be entertained.
She was really fun and really personable, and everything she was saying was just very relatable.
She's got a lot of great ideas.
That will make you stand out so fast.
She comes across as someone that likes what they do and just doesn't try to sell you something.
Activity breeds results. If you're not doing anything, you're not going anywhere.
Just made me want to start networking, which I never thought I'd say before.
A networking strategy that works for you.
Stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Welcome back to our live broadcast here, Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. It's all about dating. And by the way, we'd love to hear from you. Put your comments on social media. I'm here with my co-host, Lisa Manyoky, and our special guest, Donna Barnes. Let's talk a little bit about what it's like to work with you, Donna, when someone is going through a breakup. They reach out to you, and then what does that process look like?
Well, largely, I always say I'm kind of like either like big sister or mentor kind of person because, when they first reach out, I just listen and really hear what's going on with them. And then I usually say, thank you for telling me that. Do you want to hear what I think now? But I've gotten so good over the years at really just identifying issues and reasons, because everybody wants to know why, and everybody wants their ex back at first, how can I get my ex back, and I think really the best way to get past that is to really honestly evaluate how good was the relationship. And I always say the best question is, do I feel loved? And if you don't, then that's not a good relationship. And, if you've broken up, you don't feel loved anymore. And everybody always wants back the beginning of the relationship and who the person they fell in love with. But that's not a reality anymore. Most relationships don't even last longer than 3 or 6 months because that's when their issues start coming up. So I think, and exactly, people say, how long is it going to take me to get over this? And they think it's relative to how long the relationship was. But it actually has a lot to do with your own personal attachment and abandonment issues. And really, it's as soon as you're willing to decide that you don't want them back, because that's really it's what about. The rejection is when you want somebody who doesn't want you. But if you don't want somebody, you don't care if they don't want you. And that's the goal in getting through a relationship, is really knocking them off that pedestal and seeing them for who they truly are. And more importantly, that they're no longer making you feel loved. And you deserve someone that makes you feel loved. So, and the best time to really look at your own stuff is when you're hurting over a breakup, when you're looking at it going, well, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't he want me anymore? Why doesn't she want me? So that's really when you're most interested in self-help and growth. Like I always say to clients, do you like to read? And some of them say, yeah, and they don't really, and other people are like, yes, give me everything that you want to read, because I really do believe that knowledge is the only thing that makes you feel better. And that when you can start to process and understand And, you have to go through the 5 stages of grief. Like, that's undeniable, but everybody goes through them at a different pace and in a different order. So, denial is the first one, where you're just like, no, this isn't happening. And usually it's in the bargaining stage that people come looking for me for coaching, because they're going, okay, wait, okay, I can fix this. I can fix that. How do I fix this? How do I get this back? So, and then, the depression stage, I always try to tell clients, look, give yourself a day or two to feel like you're in a funk, but don't stop your life. Like, I've had clients that are on the verge of losing their jobs or have lost their jobs because they just can't get out of their own way to get themselves out of bed and go function in life. And you can't if you're going through a breakup, someone's already ripped your heart out. Don't let them destroy your life too. And it's a gift if you're really busy, because it gives you something else to focus on. Like, that's how you get over a breakup, is that you focus on something else. And easier said than done when you're really missing somebody. But when you really give yourself structured things to focus on, and ideally self-growth is the best part, because then you emerge as the best version of yourself. And your next relationship can be that much better. And I would say like attracts like. As you get healthier, it's easier to spot everybody else's issues too. Right? So the healthier you get, then usually the better partner you pick. Like, I say that about myself. Like, the very first breakup, I'd never really looked at any self-growth stuff ever. So, by breakup number 5 or 6, I was picking better people. And even my family would say to me, like, well, your choices are getting better. And say, well, I'm trying. So,
That's so funny. I have a question for you. A lot of really good points there. What about for people now in the pandemic, right? People are in the same home together and it just doesn't work. But they start thinking about, well, where am I going to get the money? How am I going to get the money? What about the kids? Where am I going to go? And so they just stay, right? We all know people in relationships, they just stay and they stay. When is the time to go? Like, when do you say to yourself, that's it, I've got to go?
I'm a really big fan of writing a cons list. Not so much the pros. Like, the pros, and usually people's biggest pro is that they love that person. But, if daily life as you know it has become toxic or just even unhappy, like, I firmly believe that people's happiness level dictates their level of patience and just tolerance in the world. And if you find yourself, snapping at people at the grocery store, or just like if someone knocks into you and you're just really not happy, and you're living in a situation at home, like, that's really a sign. Like, if you've changed, if you don't like who you are anymore, and you're not, feeling good about yourself, that's the time that you really need to start doing something else. And where there's a will, there's a way. There's all sorts of, if you're in a truly abusive situation, there are hotlines that you can call. They will hide you and really get you away from somebody who's abusing you. But, there's all sorts of abuse that's not physical. A verbal abuse is actually much more damaging, because it just damages your self-esteem. I mean, just about every client I've ever had has needed help raising their self-esteem in how they feel about themselves. And if you've been in a situation where someone's been criticizing you or making fun of you, and, making you the joke, and then telling you have no sense of humor. I mean, people don't recognize what verbal abuse is, but being, critical or judgmental or controlling, all of that is toxic. And if you're in a relationship with somebody like that, then you need to love yourself more and decide. It's really about deciding, right? Like, you'll get stuck in eternity just going along, going with the flow, like sweeping it under the rug, walking on eggshells, and nothing changes if nothing changes, is my favorite expression. It's so basic, but it's just so true. If you want it to change, you need to take initiative to change. And even if it's scary, just find one person that you really trust to talk about it with, and develop a plan. You need to formulate a plan. And if it's a financial thing, then you need to start saving. But there's also a lot of really wonderful city programs and community programs that are there to help people that are in seemingly impossible situations. And you do not have to stay with somebody if they're not making you happy and feel loved. And more importantly, if they're toxic to you. then you need to get out, and you can't stay for the kids. You're not doing your kids a favor if you're their paradigm of a relationship. So if it's a toxic situation, you're teaching your kids this is what a relationship is, and your kids are going to grow up and have toxic relationships too. So, I cringe when people say, well, I'm staying for the kids. You're hurting your kids if you're staying for the kids, because you're not being a positive role model for them in staying in a bad situation and modeling that for them. I mean, kids are sponges. They see everything. They take that all in. Like, I remember being a kid, and like the girls across the street, their father would come home from work and kiss their mother and say, hi, honey, I'm home. And I was like, wow, that doesn't happen in my house, right? Like, and learning that kind of emotional intimacy was a struggle for me. I had to learn that much later in life, when I was realizing that I wasn't really connecting with people that I was really wanting to connect with. So, I think, especially if you're a parent, it's really important what you're modeling for them. And if you're in a bad situation, you don't want to teach them that that's normal, because I always call that the devil just because it's what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So, I wrote my book. I called it Giving Up Junk Food Relationships. I used a food metaphor because I think it really relates. Like, junk food, right, makes you feel not so good. And it's the same thing with a bad relationship. And, it's like, just like people don't really know always how to eat healthy. They don't know how to pick a healthy relationship. And, I was having the same conversation with every client, and it was amazing to me that people just didn't realize when a relationship wasn't good for them. And, and then there's the people that say, yeah, but the next relationship is going to be the same thing. And it's like, yeah, it will be, if you don't make an effort to look at your pattern and have your red flags and your deal breakers. And you really, and I unfortunately think you don't always know what you don't want in a relationship until you had it and didn't like it. And unfortunately, you had to go through that painful experience to learn what not to sign up for the next time. But if you don't learn that lesson, you will keep signing up for it. And then it's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy that you can't find a better relationship. But if you truly choose to have a better relationship, you can create one. And you start by changing yourself so that you recognize what a healthy relationship is, and then don't turn it down.
So when a breakup occurs, should a person take some time to get to know themselves? Should they not date for a certain period of time until they're in touch with what it is they need and who they are?
Absolutely. And I cringe. Like, unfortunately, the quickest way to get over somebody is to get under somebody else, right? Like, so, far too many people just jump right into a rebound right with somebody else and don't take that time to really process and look. And you can learn so much about yourself when you're in a period of pain, because, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Yeah.
But on that note, I think here's a little neuro dating tip. The pain of rejection is just as painful as breaking a bone.
Oh, so yeah.
The part of your brain that lights up when you break a bone is the same one that lights up when you're rejected. So there is real physiological pain. You're not making it up. And it's like you would if it were your arm in a cast, you'd have 4 to 6 weeks for it to heal. And the reality is, it does take time to heal. And during that time, I've found that it's very comforting for people to understand that there's real physiology here. You're not just making it up or whining or woe is meanness. There's a real reason why you're feeling that pain. And just like any other break, you need to let it heal.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I do have a lot of clients who will say, well, I had a date last night. And I'll say, oh, really? How did it go? And they'll say, it was awful. I couldn't stop thinking about my ex, and I just wanted to come home. And I think I always say to clients, like, you'll know you're ready to date again when you can truly go out with somebody else and not be constantly in your head and comparing them to the ex and thinking about the ex and missing the ex. And, and I always say too, like Oprah once had a guest on that and I always forget who it was, but that said, if you blame, you miss the lesson. And I think that's so true. It's like when you're going through a breakup, if you're just usually it's the person that did the breaking up that wants to blame that person that they weren't good enough this, or they that, or they, whatever, they're going to blame that person. And the person that did the breaking up is usually the person that moves on right away. But they're the ones that become serial monogamists and just keep going from relationship to relationship and never take the time to look at their own stuff and what they need to do differently so that they don't move, like, for tons of relationships. Hopefully you get to a point where you just have one,
What has your experience been with people who've lost their significant other, their spouse, their boyfriend, girlfriend, the person passed away, and now they want to get back out there? What does that look like?
That's a little bit harder, but in some ways also easier. I mean, because at least people, and because not for nothing, I can't even tell you how many of my clients have said to me, I wish they died, I'd feel better. Like, and it's like, but it's when someone passes, it's not their choice to leave you. And that's easier for most people to deal with. And then it's processing the grief and the memory of that person and the betrayal. A lot of people feel that if the person's died, they're going to betray them by then being with somebody else. But especially if someone had been sick for a long time, I think most people do wish that their partner can find happiness again, and they don't want them to spend the rest of their life miserable and lonely because, you weren't able to stay with them on the face of this earth. But in a weird way, it's actually almost easier when someone died, because
it is. It happened to me. My college sweetie passed away on New Year's Day in a car accident. So it wasn't even an anonymous day. It was actually New Year's Day.
Wow.
So it was very sudden. I got one of those phone calls at midnight to say, I'm sorry, but there's been an accident on the way home from dinner. So I will tell you that then the grieving there is the grief over losing a loved one. But it's so finite and permanent that it's different, let's say, from the rejection of a breakup. I hate to say that it's more natural, but it's a little bit more forgiving in that way, because it wasn't especially if the person passed away while you were still happy and that happened. But it's the nasty gaslighting, narcissism, dysfunctional. They're the ones that
ghosting is becoming.
There's just no reason to be mean.
Now, what about, I just saw this on a Netflix show. What about when you run into your ex and they're with somebody else?
That's really painful. Yeah. I like to try to tell people to take the high road, and actually, if you're still communicating with your ex, which I don't recommend, you could talk about that. Like, if you know that they've moved on, then I do think it's, because my ex lives 5 blocks away from me. Like, it's like we talked about, look, like, you can have these places, I'll take these places. Like, let's try not to run into. And I actually ran into him on the street yesterday, but we weren't either one of us with somebody.
Wait,
I
saw him, where you weren't in a vehicle, were you? You didn't.
No, I was literally running. It was such a beautiful day yesterday, and like, he was walking across Broad Street exactly at the same time as me, and we were both looking at each other. We were like, "Hi," right? So. But I think always take the high road. I think if people have anxiety, which causes you to behave in ways that you're not proud of, but if you think about it, how are you going to feel the next day if you're going to wake up and feel like, oh, geez, why did I do that? I feel like an idiot. Like, you don't want to make yourself look bad. And not for nothing, so many people are trying to get their ex back, but yet they diminish their ex's opinion of them by acting out and being needy or confrontational or nasty. And, if you still care about your ex, and some people don't want them back because they're just so hurt, they don't think they could ever forgive that. But take the high road, it's like, why? And that's a self-esteem thing too. It's like, why would you want to lower yourself to look bad in front of their new person so that then they can go, oh yeah, I see why you left her. Like, that's not a good place to be in, so.
It also feels good to be in command when you have enough courage and enough grace to say, I'm okay. Even if inside you're crumbling. You don't have to let anybody know that. You can go crumble later, call a girlfriend and yak. But it feels good. It's really empowering to know that you can truly hold your head up and be poised about it.
I love that. I want to go back to something that Donna, you actually said earlier. So when people are coming to you and they want to go back with their ex, right? It didn't work. And then some time's gone by and the person shows up again. Like my father would always say, a bad penny always turns up, whatever the expression is. But What is it about the fact that they want to go back? We know it doesn't work.
Well, yes, there's twofold of that. Like sometimes a break is necessary for you. Sometimes you don't know how much something means to you until you've lost it. And, but I always say, if you're going to go back, it's that nothing changes if nothing changes. Something needs to be different, or you're just going to break up all over again. So if you're getting back together because you got clarity about something and your feelings have changed, and you just want to try it again, or like you felt unresolved. Unfortunately, most of the time when the ex comes back, it fails again because it felt good to reunite, and they're just kind of fall back into the same patterns. And if they didn't discuss things and say, this is what's going to change, then, and I think unfortunately too, when you go through a breakup with somebody else, a lot of people look to their kind of like little black book, as they used to call it, to say like, oh, who could I get together with, right? Because you just want to fill that need of being with somebody. And it's easier to reconnect with somebody that you've already been with than to go find somebody new to hook up with. So unfortunately, I think that happens too. And that's why I frequently say to clients, if your ex just texted you hi, in fact, I made that video for YouTube, did your ex just text hi? And it gets a lot of it, because that happens a lot. And I'm like, there's no response required. If they're just looking for a little fix from you, don't give it to them. If they full out ask you a question, plus if they're trying to get back together with you and you don't respond to their text, they will call you. They'll keep trying if that's what they want. But don't let them rip the Band-Aid off for you in just that stupid little hi. It's no sweat off their brow. They're the ones that left. They don't care. It's killing you. Don't let them do that.
Yeah, I love that, because I always say they know how to get in touch with you, right?
Yes.
They know where you are. They know how to get in touch with you if they really want you back that badly. But they have to make a change. You have to make a change. You can't. It's insanity to go back to the same thing over and over again.
And if you really can't, I just did this recently for a friend of mine who didn't have enough strength, was in a toxic relationship, and knew he could not get out of it without help. So he gave me his email, and I intercepted the emails. And I developed filters. She was blocked on his phone. And so he made contact impossible. Now, she could have shown up at his house, but she's not local. But so in other words, he got support that laid out a plan that enabled her to reach him, because he knew that if he got the hi or the how are you, he'd waffle. He'd be right back where he started and go through the cycle of ugly all over again.
Right. Yeah, he'd respond. And I also got a lot of clients too that don't realize that they don't have to answer. That, they'll say, well, my ex calls me all the time. I say, why answer the phone?
Right.
You don't have to answer.
I love that. It sounds like all three of us have gotten the hi, how are you?
Everybody does. Because it's because I always say, when you're going through a breakup, the person who did the breaking up, there's always the habit you have of interacting with somebody that both of you need to break. Even if you're the one that wanted out of the relationship, you still have that habit of interacting with them. So they like to wean themselves off of it, but that's not good for you. It's actually, I was living with my ex and we were breaking up, and he actually called me in the room. He's like, come here. What things of yours do you have that I want? That I was like, I'm not going to help you break up with me. Figure it out for yourself. It's like the person who's doing the breaking up, wants all sorts of things. And actually, I had a client years ago who had bought her husband a bar, a functioning business. And then he said to her, she'd gained weight and it was kind of her Achilles heel, and she was really feeling uncomfortable about it. And, he said to her, I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I'm going to date other people. But he wanted to keep the bar, and she was going to let him have it. And I was just like, you're a package deal. All of you or none of you. And no, if he wants the bar, he needs to keep his marriage commitment. But no, so
how did it go? How did it work out?
She left him, and then she felt quite empowered about it. And I was very proud of her, because, it's just torture to have to watch somebody that you really still love, moving on with their life when you're stuck and you can't move on because they're still part of your life. Get rid of them so you can move on.
And if you can't, get somebody to help you. It's no different than when
Exactly.
you need somebody to move stuff out of your home. You hire a company, so get help, right?
Well, exactly. And unfortunately, as children, we're not necessarily taught, this is how you deal with breakups and this is how you deal with, it's like, I had one client who was a very successful businesswoman, and she'd met a man that she liked, and she hired me to help her not mess it up. And she kept saying to me, I can't believe I'm paying somebody to talk to me about my relationship. I'm a very successful woman. And she couldn't wrap her brain around the fact, but she needed me. Like, she'd be in the bathroom on a date going, he brought his friend. Is that okay? What do I do? I was like, he wants to show you off. Yes. Be charming.
Oh my goodness. I cannot believe that we're at the top of the hour and I'm actually frozen here. So,
I just noticed that too. Sorry.
Yes, frozen. So Donna, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you? And if you would share again, the services that you provide.
Well, I am a life and relationship coach that specializes with breakups. DonnaBarnes.com is the hub for everything. But Donna@DonnaBarnes.com is my email address, or you can just click contact through DonnaBarnes.com. But I'm happy to help people through bad relationships, good relationships, single looking for a relationship, or largely people who just lost a relationship or lost it a year ago and just stuck and can't move on. Then I'm really good at helping you recognize the facts of what your relationship is and helping you become the best version of yourself so that you find a better relationship.
I love that. And I think that that's such an important point, that we all get stuck and we need somebody to say, hey, you think this is really that great, but guess what? This person isn't acting like they really love you. They're not showing you the respect that you deserve. You have to start by respecting yourself.
Right. And getting your needs met.
Yes.
Right? If you're not getting your needs met, then.
Exactly. Well, Donna, it's been a pleasure having you here. I thank you, and I look forward to when we can get back out there. I'd love to get together with you over in Philly.
I would love that. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much. Yeah.
That's great. We'll be backstage in just a moment. If you can wait for us, that would be terrific.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Lisa, it's been another great show. We always have such wonderful guests with really important information. And there are people out there going through breakups who really do need to talk to someone. So they should give Donna Barnes a call.
Yeah, there's no medal of, I've said this before, there's no medal of honor for going it alone. There's just not. There's absolutely no reason. If you want to accelerate feeling better, then coaches are allies. I mean, we're all coaches. You, Donna, myself, makes the process a lot more manageable. Not easy, but manageable.
It certainly does. Lisa, I'm going to spotlight you. How can we get in touch with you for Presence Intelligence? Also, you are a TV show host at RVN TV. So share with us about that too.
Yes, I co-host Morning Coffee on Wednesdays, which is a variety show where we interview a number of different professionals about their talents or initiatives that are happening in terms of health and wellness and even COVID. But my focus is Presence Intelligence. Again, that's the ability to align who you are on the inside with what you project on the outside in a positive way. And you can reach me at talkwithcoachlisa.com. And that will give you a link to get on my calendar where we'll have a little chat and see what I can offer to improve your personal presence.
Thank you very much, my friend. I will see you backstage. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
All right. And thank you so much to everybody who's listening and watching. I really appreciate it. I want to thank my co-host Lisa and our guest Donna Barnes. And I also want to remind you of our new platform, A Better You, lessons from the best coaches, consultants, and trusted advisors. This is a platform where you hear lessons from experts. They are 15-minute presentations, and ultimately they will be up on A Better You University, where they will be paired with a quiz, and you can take the lesson, the quiz, and then get a certificate. So stay tuned for that. Our shows are Wednesday at 4 and Thursdays at 11 and 2. Thank you again for being here. We have 3 shows tomorrow, starting with Pet Psychic Amina at 3:30. Then 5 o'clock is Stories of Hope, Inspiration, and Overcoming Adversity. And then our 6 o'clock show is all about variety. It's the variety show. So we'll see you tomorrow. Take care of yourself. And again, thanks for your loyalty.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.